thanks very much for joining us. You know, modern-day Massachusetts has never been an inexpensive place to live, with high energy, food, fuel, and housing costs, and relatively high taxes. Lately, people are voting with their feet as well. More than 100,000 people left the state in a recent two-year period, raising all sorts of policy alarm bells. That's the finding of a new study of IRS data by the business-backed Massachusetts Taxpayers Foundation. Here to talk about that and more is the president of MTF, Doug Howgate. Doug, good to have you here. Good to be had. Thank you so much for having me. So people are leaving for cheaper states, warmer states. That's really nothing new. We've seen that before in our history. Why should we worry about it now?
Yeah, you know, like many northeastern states, I think Massachusetts has been dealing with some demographic headwinds pre-pandemic, right? I think what we saw with the pandemic is an acceleration of some of those trends. For a lot of folks, the relative cost of leaving Massachusetts became cheaper, right? More options opened up to still maybe keep a base in Massachusetts, but live in Maine, live in Vermont. And so you have that kind of amplifying what was happening beforehand. And then I think there have been some policy decisions, right? You think of whether it's this income surtax or other things related to our transportation system, child care system, that I think are just ratcheting up some of those tendencies, both for people at the high end of the income spectrum and people at the low end of the income spectrum.
Well, I don't mean to be flip about a serious issue, but given the traffic congestion, the real estate prices around here, maybe it's good that some people are leaving.
Well, I do think it's interesting. If you look within Massachusetts, it's a bit of a microcosm of that same scenario we just talked about. The Cape is seeing growth in population for the first time in a while. We're seeing some population on the South Coast, some areas of the Berkshires, and so there could be areas of Massachusetts where these kind of relocation patterns are absolutely a good thing, but I think we need holistically to think about how does Massachusetts stack up compared to other regions pre-pandemic to now.
Well, your report noted that this exodus is especially acute among young people, 26 to 35. If we can't reverse that trend, what does that mean for the future?
Yeah, and I think that's really one of the multi-billion-dollar question is who's leaving, right? And the answer is it's not just one group of people, right? And so one of the things we wanted to focus on in this report is, yes, we're worried about retirees or we're worried about maybe high wealth folks, but we're also seeing this 26 to 35 cohort leaving, and that's our future workforce, right? And given the fact that, you know, we're an aging population, you know, natural population growth in Massachusetts is not particularly high, we need that cohort of folks in Massachusetts to serve our economy and make sure the state thrives.
Well, one of the potential answers that appears to have some bipartisan agreement behind it is tax cuts. There's a major tax cut package awaiting action on Beacon Hill, and while the cuts targeted lower-income residents seem sure to pass, what about the estate tax and the capital gains tax cuts? What's their prognosis?
You know, I think the prognosis is strong. You know, when you look at the tax relief package that Governor Healy put forward in March and now the House has acted on, I think one of the smart things in both of those packages is they have a lot in common with each other and with what passed the House, the Senate, and was proposed by Governor Baker last year. So there's a lot of things in common, which I think makes action more likely. And one of the things that's been included in every iteration of that is some reform to the state's estate tax. Maybe not as much as some organizations like ours would like to see, but meaningful reform. And then in short-term capital gains, this is something Governor Baker proposed. We're now seeing Governor Healy talk about it and include it in her package. Same with the House. The Senate hasn't approved that in the past, so that's more of a question mark. But I will say, when you look at our capital gains rate compared to other states, it's a huge outlier, right? So it's clearly something that I think people are taking and need to take a close look at.
All right, well, we'll find out soon enough.